welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. It is playoff time. Fantasy playoffs are here, whether that be Dynasty or Redraft. It is super important to understand the marketplace. And of course, I'm here to talk about some Dynasty Risers and Fallers with you. We're going to run you through some buys, some sells, and all the transactions you should be making in your Dynasty leagues. We'll start at the top, Chase Brown. Now, if you were a Discord member, I've been talking up Chase Brown for the last couple of weeks as a great buy. And this last week, it exploded off the page, showed exactly what he can do. Joe Mixon could potentially be cut by the Bengals at the end of the season. They can save over $5 million if they choose to move on from him. I think worst case scenario, Chase Brown is a 1B next year. But there is absolutely a world where he could be a 1A and carve out a significant workload next year. I would happily pay a mid-2024 first to go and buy him. I don't think you have to. I think you can buy him right now for probably 2/3, maybe a late second round pick. Because I think whilst he's had a good production for 2 weeks now, I think people still see him as a flash in the pan and not something they can buy. And I think if he does it again this week, then his price will double. But easily a player I'm happy to go and speculate on right now because I think he's a great opportunity to cover a bigger workload next year. The next guy we're looking at, James Cook. Now, James Cook, fascinatingly, the last 3 weeks since Joe Brady's taken over the play calling duties, has seen a smaller role in terms of overall opportunity share. Under the previous OC, he was seeing sort of 70% opportunity share week in, week out. He's been under 55% every week under Joe Brady, but he's seen a large reduction in the number of carries between the 20s and seen a huge increase in target share. He's been over 12% in the last 3 weeks. He's seen 16 targets in the last 3 games. And because of that increase in high value touches, he's producing more from a fantasy perspective. He's been a top 12 back the last 3 weeks. I think in terms of contending running backs, James Cook's easily a back-end RB1 for this playoff stretch. If you can pivot from a player like DeAndre Swift to James Cook, I think you might even be able to get an asset on top. Or you can go out and send that contenders first to go and bring in James Cook. So I think with the way that the Bills are using him and the way the Bills are going to have to play for the rest of the season, he's definitely got some interesting usage and going to be fantasy relevant. And as I said, a plug-and-play running back for your fantasy team moving forward. The next riser, DJ Moore. Now, I'm still not fully convinced that Justin Fields is the answer in Chicago. I think they could opt to go with a quarterback at 101 and move on Justin Fields. But the way DJ Moore is being used, I think he's only going to be better next year. I think we're probably going to see an offensive play caller used. But DJ Moore has been phenomenal, 27.6% target share. You see he's getting the combination of manufactured touches, whether that be on end arounds, screens, but also seeing 24 deep targets as well as 7 red zone looks. He's getting used all over the field. And yeah, I'm probably been a little bit late to the party on him just because I didn't think he had this ceiling outcome, but he's the wide receiver 7 overall, 9 in points per game, and has really, really impressed. So I think he's a borderline top 12 Dynasty wide receiver at the moment and easily pay a mid-first for him right now. The other guy, hats off to Tom. Tom's been the Deebo believer. I was on Team Ayuk, but Deebo's just been balling the last 3 weeks, top 10 weeks in a row. He's doing it without commanding a huge target share. We know that he's getting those manufactured touches. And basically, I think it's a case of when Deebo's fit and healthy, and yes, there are absolutely going to be weeks when he's not fit and healthy, he's a stud and, averaging almost 18 points per game at the moment. He's the top 12 wide receiver in points per game. I think he's elite, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere for at least the next year or two. So if you've got him as a wide receiver 2 in your Dynasty roster, I think you're in a really, really good place. Probably not the right time to go and buy him right now. I think his price is probably a little bit high off the back of these 3 performances. Maybe he's just a hold. Maybe you can potentially look to sell if you can get a haul. I would pay a mid-2024 first, the place that's where his value is right now. If you can sell for more than that, maybe it's a good time to pivot because we know that he is going to have time where he's not on the field. The final riser, look, Quentin Johnston. I'm not a fan. I'm not a believer. I don't like the talent. I don't want to call him a bust, but he's definitely trending that way. However, this last week, he showed more nuance in his route running than I've seen for the rest of the season. I thought he was quicker in and out the breaks. I think he's still a freak athlete. And also, there's a world where the Chargers completely blow it up at the end of the year. They're over the cap. They've got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, all potentially facing points in their contracts where it's either re-sign them long-term, push money down the road, or rip off the Band-Aid and start again. I do wonder if we see a new play caller, a new offensive coordinator, new head coach, build around Justin Herbert and Rashawn Slater and kind of go from there. So it could be that Quentin Johnston is the only mouth to feed in this offense next year. I think Austin Eckler's gone. So maybe there's some upside there. If you can get him for a mid to late second, that's the price I'd pay. But yeah, I don't have a huge amount of value in him long term, but I think he's shown more this last 2 weeks than perhaps I was expecting. If you're here, if you like your Dynasty content, we're heading into the off-season very soon. I'm going to have so much content talking rookies, Dynasty strategy, everything you want. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you don't miss it. Moving to the Fallers now. Josh Dobbs, he got benched last week. I think there's some talk that he could potentially be a fringe starter. I think that's gone now. I think he is now a career backup. I think there is no world where he's going to be anything more than a high value backup like Jacoby Brissett, that sort of Drew Lock range. I think if you can get a third round pick for him, I'd absolutely do that right now. I think he's not going to start for the rest of the season, and as a free agent in the off season, who knows where he's going, but I think it's time to sell for whatever you can get, and that's probably a third round pick in those Superflex leagues. Travis Kelce. Now, Travis Kelce's been my tight end one for the last 4 years. This weekend was the first time I dropped him. He's still producing, but we're now at a point where the age, the slight decline in production, this is his worst fantasy season since 2019. I think that probably next year is going to be the last year maybe that he is a true elite performer. And you just can't have him that price that high in Dynasty circles if he's going to be there. So, yeah, still great, still elite. If you're a contender, you've got to hold. But I think if you're looking towards next year, I wouldn't be shocked if we see him down like the Titan 4, Titan 5 in Dynasty value this off-season, because I think people are going to turn and kind of ready to get out on the age as we see some of these young tight ends starting to get pushed up. So, yeah, maybe if you can sell to a contender now, before we get to the off-season, because I think his value is definitely going to plummet. Rashod Bateman. Now, this one hurts. I was a Rashod Bateman believer when he came out. I really believed in the talent, but he's now just a complete roster clogger, averaging less than 5 points per game. He's running fewer and fewer routes. Nelson Aguilar's getting more targets than him. He's got an 11% target share, 1 yards per route run. I think if you can get a third-round pick for him, go for it. I'd want a late second, but to be honest, I'd take a third. I think there's very little world where he ever becomes fantasy relevant. So he's in that roster clogger range, probably too good to drop. But yeah, I think you probably can just grab what you can, add him as a throw into another piece of deal and just move on. The other next faller, Dameon Pierce, running back 50 overall, averaging just over 7 points per game. He has only broken 12 points once this year. I think any hope that he was going to be a bell cow, any hope that he was going to be fantasy relevant has gone. Devin Singletary's outplaying him, outproducing him. Devin Singletary's just a guy at this point. I think Dameon Pierce is done. You can throw him in that roster clogger territory. Yes, I don't really consider running backs roster cloggers because I think he's one injury away from being slightly more relevant, but I'd take a second round pick for him right now if you could get it. Maybe I'd accept 2/3 as well, because I just don't see a world where you trust him enough to plug him into your lineup. And then the final faller, DeAndre Swift. What started off so phenomenally well at the start of the season has just petered out. He's had 1 week over the last 7 where he's produced more than 15 fantasy points. This is despite the fact that he's getting over 65% of the touches in this backfield. He's a pending free agent. Look, the free agent running back class this year is absolutely wild. I think there's too many backs and too few spots. I don't think he's going to get paid any sort of big money. If you can get any first, if you can get an early second, I think now's the time to get out. I don't think he's going to necessarily help you in the playoffs this year. And I think that his value is plummeting this offseason because I don't think anyone's going to pay him big money because there's a lot of good backs out on the free agent market. and there's not many teams that are going to be willing to pay up. So probably get out now if you can, because I certainly don't want to be left holding the bag come this offseason. And that's it. 5 risers, 5 fallers. Let me know, is there someone you disagree with? Is there someone I've missed out? Drop us in the comments below. And of course, stick around because Thursday we'll be back for our preview show.